Hey guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price, and as you can tell, I'm not in my normal surroundings. This is because I'm in the process of moving, so I'm actually in the new place right now. I'm just kind of getting a feel for it along with Luna over here. She's getting more of a feel for it probably than I am just by standing here. And I could have easily waited 2 or 3 weeks to record this video, wait till I actually had everything set up like I did in the other place. But I didn't want to. Between the move and a recent promotion I have at work, I've been extremely busy lately. Hopefully here in the next 2 or 3 weeks or so, I'll settle down, I'll be able to put some more videos up. But man, life is good. In fact, dare I say it.
Everything's coming up Millhouse.
Enough about my more recent life events, though. I got a question for you guys. When was the first time that you remember seeing a scene or a sequence in a film that really scared you? We're all horror movie fans here, right? When was the first time that a scene in a movie really got to you, gave you nightmares, kept you up, really messed with you? Was it the first scene in Jaws? The shower scene in Psycho? Was it any number of scenes in Stephen King movies? Carrie, It, The Shining? Or was it something a little more rare? Was it even a horror movie? Hey, that's valid. There are comedies, fantasy films, sci-fi films that have really nightmarish stuff in them. So just let me know in the comment section below, what was the first scene that you saw in a movie that really got to you? For me, the answer is very simple, but unfortunately, whenever people ask me that question, I'm always like, well, I don't really know what to tell you because no one's ever heard of this movie. So I can bring up the movie, I can talk about it, but no one knows what I'm talking about. So today, I'm finally going to do this review, a true Priceless B movie. I consider this film to be one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, if not the scariest movie I've ever seen. But is it still a good movie? Don't Look Up. Don't Look Up is a Japanese horror film from 1996 directed by Hideo Nakata. He's the only name that I'm going to drop in this whole review because I'm not even going to begin to try to guess how to pronounce the names of a lot of people who are involved in this movie. Just out of respect, I don't want to be the guy who butchers 8 names in one video, so we'll leave it with the director. Nakata directed this film just 2 short years before directing a movie that's far more well known. It's called Ringu. And Ringu, made in 1998, just a couple years or so after that, was remade in America in the film that we all know as horror fans, The Ring. That's right, the guy who directed Ringu, which inspired The Ring, this was his first film project, I believe. I could be wrong, he might have done a short film or something before this, but I think this was his first big production. The story revolves around a director who's trying to make this romantic World War II drama film. He's having a little bit of trouble keeping his crew together. A lot of these people are first-timers, and he's really feeling the weight of making this movie good. This is one of his first projects too. You're wondering if Hideo Nakata had kind of projected a little bit onto this character. Early on in the film, they're going over the dailies, and everything looks good at first. They're all talking, murmuring, and then, of course, right in the middle of the video footage, this happens. Kind of weird there. Yeah, a little bit of flickering and different images popping up. This is clearly not what they filmed, but then it gets even weirder. Creepy, right? Yeah, I thought so too when I was 12 years old and watched this movie for the first time. Turns out that the set that they are using, the studio they're using, is haunted by the ghost of a young woman who likes to hang out up in the catwalks and the attic space of the studio, hence the title. And that's really it for the story. I mean, it's simple. I think that's one of its strengths. Here in America, everything has to be The Conjuring. Everything has to be Saw. Everything has to be so intricate and complex. There's no weird-ass death traps in this movie. There's no, this monster that's a metaphor for grief or trauma. It's just a ghost story, and a damn good one, and a sharp one, clocking in at, I think it's only 75 minutes. This is not a long movie by any stretch of the imagination. It just comes in, creeps you out, spooks you good, and it's over. And really, I think that's the secret to why this is such an effective film for me. Also, and this is kind of something I'm a little mixed on because I like it and I don't, but when you're watching this film, it doesn't ever feel like any of the characters are stereotypes. It's just, here's the director, here's these two actresses, here's a couple of guys on the crew. And that's really who you're stuck dealing with for most of the film. But it's not like one of the girls is an info and one of the guys is an alcoholic, or this one character is definitely the main character and these people are definitely going to die by the end of it. It's not that kind of movie. You don't feel like these are stereotypes or archetypes the way that we do characters in American horror films. Everyone just feels like they're that person and this is why they're there, and they're all just caught up in these kind of spooky goings on during this shoot. Like I said, though, that is kind of something that I'm mixed on because everyone feels like a real person. Everyone feels really grounded in reality. But also because of that, sometimes it's hard to figure out who you're supposed to be rooting for. Like which one of these characters you're supposed to become attached to and become emotionally invested in. I would just say it's the director. But if someone watched this movie and they said it's one of the two actresses, it'd be hard for me to argue that. It doesn't really feel like there's a single main character that the story is revolving around. You could kind of watch it and give a subjective opinion on it. I recently read that Nakata actually doesn't think that this movie is as good as some of his other films. Honestly, I could see most people watching this and thinking the same thing, thinking this is not as good as Ringu, this is not as good as Dark Water, this is, a first-time effort and it shows. Yeah, in some ways, but I do think that this is a more effective ghost story than either of those two films. I know I'm probably in the minority there, but let's face it, a lot of my opinions are in the minority. For example, in the same interview, I read that Nakata was kind of upset at how much he showed the ghost over the course of the film, and that he thought that that took away from it. I could see that. I could see that being a thing of like Alien or Jaws, like the less you show. But honestly, I don't think that the ending scenes of this movie would have the impact that they did if you didn't see little shots of this character in shadow, in silhouette. One thing that Japanese horror does really well, and that I wish we could learn this here in America, oh my God, is that you don't need to have jump scenes every 5 or 10 minutes. You can show an image of someone right behind the character the camera's focusing on, and you don't necessarily need to draw attention to it. As viewers, we're smart. We're going to see that. And that's going to get under our skin, more than having some blast of music right at that moment, or some shriek or some whatever that just kind of, at least to me, just kind of numbs you by, an hour into the film. As far as this film's strengths go, the cinematography is wonderful. You really feel like you're part of the set, and you really feel also with the sound design and the music, which kind of campy, but this was the 90s, really does add to the overall effect and mood of this film. I don't think that the scare scenes themselves, as subtle as they are, would be nearly as effective if all those stars didn't align the way they do. Performances are pretty decent all around. As I said before, there is this kind of grounding in reality feel. I don't think there's any CG or like real special makeup effects in this movie whatsoever. I don't think there's any real like blatant jump scares, as I've already made mention. There's just some really subtle, creepy shots. That's really what this movie is about, is building the dread, building the atmosphere. And I just rewatched this last night so I could stay fresh for this review. There's no on-screen violence. Not that I can readily think of. One character dies, you don't really see it. And, it's kind of weird that, looking back, that this movie is powerful enough that, to me, I can still say this is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen, but in terms of content, it's really tame. I know that this movie isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. If you really are a fan of horror movies that are much more complex, or as they call like elevated horror, you're not going to find anything in here that is going to blow you away. This is a simple movie. As I said before, it gets in, it gets the job done, it gets out. It doesn't require a whole lot of thought. It doesn't require a lot of anything really on the part of the viewer other than just sit there and let us traumatize you. I think this movie is a treasure, personally. But at the same time, I will acknowledge some of the flaws. I will acknowledge that there's no real standout reason to watch this film other than for the scare scenes, other than to get that atmosphere, to get that dread, to get spooked by it. You're not going to leave this with anything on your mind. You're not going to be like, man, that one scene really puzzled me. Wonder how they got the idea for that. You're not going to be thinking, man, that was the smartest screenplay that I've ever seen. But this is a good time, and honestly, I'd be hard-pressed to find someone who I think could sit through this whole movie and not at least feel a little creeped out. It means much more than that to me, but that's me. At the end of the day, I'm going to give Don't Look Up 3 out of 4 stars. I think that this is a perfectly serviceable, scary movie. The nostalgia that I have for it aside, I can't give a movie 4 stars just because of an effect it had on me when I first saw it. I can watch it now and notice, this part isn't great, or this. But overall, I still think it's an incredibly effective horror film. Also, for those who are on my Facebook and who are following this, let's call it 663. You know what I mean. Thanks for watching. Like I said, once I get this place fixed up a little bit, I'll get back to posting more reviews. I'm eager to do it. But life happens, and that comes first. And I don't know how many reviews I want to film in a completely empty space. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.